From the heartland of America and coast to coast, this is EM Student with Professor Dan Scott.
The more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. Dr. Seuss. Welcome to EM Student. I'm Dan Scott, and today we're going to spend some time talking about education and continuing education. As I've said many times, I'm an investor in people and a promoter of personal and professional growth. So today on the show, I brought on someone who has invested in me, in my professional growth, as someone who needs no introduction, Todd DeVoe.
Hey, everybody. It's great to be here, Dan. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, thank you for agreeing to come on and have this discussion. I mean, you as a professor yourself, and we've done some classes together, some courses together, and we both believe in lifelong learning. We both believe in investing in others to do the same. So the question is that we want to talk about, that we're going to have a discussion about, is when do we make that decision? When do we know that it's time for me to grab a course, or go to some training, or get a certificate, or potentially go back for a full-fledged degree? So in your opinion, how do we make that decision?
Well, I mean, the decision for training is a no-brainer, right? I mean, you have to continually do training. On LinkedIn, there is a group of young emergency managers that have a competition going on, a challenge, if you will. And it's see a certificate, get a certificate. And what they're doing is they're putting their certificates that they get from FEMA, from EMI, or from CS, or from whatever they're taking the classes at. And they put it up there, whether it's the distance learning classes or whatever. And then they go, okay, now the challenge is, do you earn that same certificate? So I think that's kind of neat. And so that's encouraging that idea of continuing education. Where it becomes a question of what you should do for your personal and professional growth is when you're looking at doing, say, a master's program or a PhD program, or if you already have a master's, do you get a PhD, or do you get a certificate? Or if you have your bachelor's degree, do you get a master's or certificate, or what do you get your master's in? So there's a lot of decision making going on at that point. And that's one of the questions I get a lot from a lot of people through LinkedIn, through Facebook, through my students calling me, those things of what they should do. And I think really realistically, there are a couple of different ways of looking at this. And I don't want to say age necessarily in the idea of your years left on earth, right? I want to say age left in your career. And so if you're at the end of your career, say you're, last 5-10 years and you're getting ready to retire or whatever. And what is that education value for you? If you plan on, say, getting your PhD, which could take between 3 to 7 years, depends on where you go. What do you want to do with that? Do you want to teach? And then take a look at the return on investment on that, right? Depends on where you're going. I have a friend of mine who went to USC and he spent close to $300,000 on his PhD. So his goal now is to recoup that money. I know you're going through a PhD right now. You know what I mean? So you understand the economic question based upon that. If you already have your master's, and then here's the other question, right? And we'll get deeper into this. I know this. So the other question is what do you get your master's or your bachelor's in, right? So say you have, and the hypothetical person has is receiving their bachelor's degree in emergency management, right? Should you get a master's in emergency management? And my recommendation on that is no, right? Get yourself a little bit more well-rounded in your thought processes and what you need to do. And okay, so I am biased a little bit because I have my master's in public administration. I think that in emergency management, I think that's probably one of the most useful degrees, and not because I have it, right? Um, but because of going through the process of what you learn. You learn HR, you learn whatever your concentration is. In my case, it was urban planning, right? You learn urban planning, which is very important, right? And if you think about EM, understand the planning process and why we do what we do. You learn finance, so you get touches in each of those areas, and it gives you becomes all those tools that you need to have to lead an organization, right? Um, and then the other question is, or if I have your undergrad and something else, do you get a master's in emergency management? And it depends again, right, of what your goal is. So, are you currently working in emergency management? Do you currently have a position? Right. So, say in the case for you, Dan, we'll use you as an example. Here you are sitting, you're already a director of an organization. I know you already have your master's, but just for this sake, and you're looking to improve yourself. What masters would you need? Would emergency management make sense to you? Potentially, but if you're already working in the field of emergency management, what do you want to do? Are you trying just to solidify your bona fides with that, right? To say, hey, I have this master's in emergency management, or is it going to be something that's going to help you improve yourself? So that's the question. And I think at the end of the day, right? I think if we look at it, what program are you going to? Is it going to help you be better? And so I think that kind of was a long answer to a short question, but I think it's going to open up some more conversation between the two of us.
Absolutely. And you hit on some key concepts there, which is application. How are you going to apply it? If you what is your desire, number one, and what is your intention for seeking another degree? And it can go further too. I mean, or I should say, at a lower level, an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree. What is your interest level? What profession are you in? Or what profession are you seeking to be in? And of course, for the purposes of this show, we're talking about emergency management, students in emergency management. But that doesn't mean you have to be a student of emergency management in a college class. Myself, I got my bachelor's degree in social welfare, but I applied that in emergency management, and it was so dealing with people, dealing with people from different backgrounds, dealing with how to work with the government, human resource. There was so much that went into that, but it was not a degree in emergency management. So how do we, or how are we going to apply that? And as you said, you got your master's in public administration, and we're not necessarily saying go get your degree in emergency management. We're saying how do you intend to apply that, and where do you want to go? And also, there are those who work their profession or their career and are looking to get out of that and are thinking, do I need to get a degree to go do something else? What if I do want to go teach, or I want to transition to emergency management, which is very common among first responders who
Mm-hmm.
go into the field. They spend 20 years, or the military, they spend 20 years to get their 20 in. They want to retire out, and they want to go into another profession. And emergency management is one that strikes an interest, but it could be anything. And how are they going to apply that? What education do they need to then do that? And there are so many too to decide. Do I just go back and get my certification as an AEM or a CEM, a certified emergency manager, or do I go through a graduate program and get a certificate in Homeland Security Emergency Management or Emergency Management, however it's titled? But it also, it does boil down to application. What am I going to do with it, and what's the benefit going to be to me? If I'm getting it for a goal of mine, a career goal, great, or a lifelong goal that I want to know that I got my degree, great. And you're not going to apply it anywhere. That's on you. But if you want to apply somewhere, how are you going to apply it, and how's that going to benefit your career moving forward? And I think it's a lot when we're looking, especially when we're educating the next generation of EMs, is how do we better prepare them to go into a profession with the current degree that they have, which may not be in emergency management, to apply it towards emergency management principles.
There's a couple things in that. One is, and I didn't mention this in my little monologue, if you will, the idea of certificate programs. And I think certificate programs are great. If you have say you have your degree, your master's degree already, and you don't want to get a PhD, but you need to get some more cred, if you will, in emergency management. I think, and you learn in these certificate programs because they're geared more towards practical application, right? And there's various different programs. I mean, I teach in the certificate program at UCI, and we're trying to make it a little bit more robust right now, and we're adding some programs to it, and stuff like this. And then Harvard has a great certificate program in leadership, and um, uh, George Washington University has a certificate program in emergency management. Penn State has one. To name a few, and I'm sure there's a few more out there that I'm not thinking about right now. But the reason why I bring this up is there's also like where you get your certificate, I think, has a little bit more umph to it. What I mean by that is you can get a certificate at the community college in emergency management. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's very economical. You're going to learn stuff. You're definitely going to do well in the program. So I'm not disparaging. I teach at a community college as well, so I'm not trying to say it's worse than, but there is a little bit to it when you put Harvard and the connections that you make at Harvard, through Eric McNulty's program over there. There is some additional value to spending that money going to a program like Harvard or UCI or George Washington or those things. So choosing the institution is also important as well as the training. Now, if you're just getting the training to get the training, I mean, and I don't mean this, again, it sounds negative, but go wherever you need to go, right? If you just need to get the training, if you do not have a basic understanding of emergency management and you want to improve yourself, go to the community college. It's very economical, right? That's, you'll learn, you'll get the information that you need to get. You'll be able to have conversation and be able to present yourself well when you go in for an interview. Well worth your time, so certificate programs are worth it as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about community college, but you can also look into courses that are offered by your state or by EMI. The Basic Academy is a great introduction to emergency management 3-week program that you get to go. You can do it. They do offer it in state, or you can go to EMI and you take advantage of the Emergency Management Institute's online learning in the independent study program. And you come out of that with a certificate that's actually one that is utilized right now, and I'm seeing more in job descriptions, which is the professional development series. You come out, they say at the very, that qualification, they want the PDS. And having that means you've gone through these courses, you have a basic understanding of what emergency management is.
And Dan, to just interrupt you, I'm sorry. That's how I started in my emergency management education when I was working in EMS, and I was starting to do more emergency management stuff. I went to the professional development series online, and that was very, very. This was back in the late 90s, and it worked, right? I learned a lot of stuff through that. So it's again, the EMI, the CSTI here in California, and independent study courses. They're all really great ways of learning, right? And the problem, my only issue with those programs, the ones online through FEMA, independent study courses, is that you really need to it's self-driven. I'm assuming since you're registering for the course that you're interested in the course, but you realistically, you can send emails, ask questions, but it's really self-driven. You have to be really self-motivated. If you are not a self-motivated learner, you're not going to get much out of those programs. So, sorry.
I agree with it. No, I agree with that. And that's where I started as well. Because when I started working in emergency management, as I've said many times on the show, is I didn't have a degree, number one. Number two, I didn't really have an understanding of what emergency management was until I had to start doing it. And I needed to know more about what to do, how to do the things that were needed to be the proper emergency manager and be the best for the organization I was representing, which required training. That training then led to more training, which led to an education, which led to degrees, which led to where I am today. And so it's a process, but it also depends on where you are in your career. Are you beginning? Are you in the middle? Or are you at the end? And how are you going to apply that? And where do you want to go with it? I understand we have some comments, so let's address some of those. So it says, Nick says it depends. The most frustrating but correct answer everywhere. Yeah, that is correct.
Oh man.
Uh,
Yeah, you are.
a professor of practice is also slowly being removed from a lot of departments, as well as even education is starting to have a terminal degree requirement to teach. That is true.
Yeah, Nick, absolutely. The balance between a pedigree and a piece of paper are things that you learn along the way, such as you're absolutely correct on that. You know, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at a little bit too, is I, I'm not saying to go to Harvard because of the name. I would say go to Harvard because of the connections that you make over there.
And the
Right.
quality of individuals that are there to teach. Yeah, they do. They require you to be, very well, very like you're be held in high esteem themselves as the individual that teaches in those programs. So you not only do you have the name that says you got into Harvard to do this program, which is very hard to do, by the way. You have individuals that you're learning from who are the best in the field.
Yeah, I
So
mean, and if you are, there's some qualifications that you have to make. What I mean qualifications is like certain industries that you're working in and whatnot. But the Naval Postgraduate School is
number
another
one,
place. Yeah, you know, and you go there. Again, the alumni network, if you will, is huge. And so think about those things too when you're choosing a program. Is going through the alumni network.
yeah, the Naval Postgraduate School is ranked number one in the country in response to their program.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, hang on a second. Still got a little cough coming from when I was sick a couple weeks ago. Um, no, it's not COVID. I know Brian's thinking that in the back of his head over there. So yeah, I mean, like education and training, and here's let's kind of delve into that a little bit, Daniel. The idea of education versus training. Um, what's the difference in your mind?
Well, in my mind, when it comes to training, you're getting trained on a specific area. So um, you're there to seek training in a specific area of focus versus an education which is expanded over a subject area that is all encompassing on many different things. In my mind, that's what versus training versus education.
No, you're spot on with that. I agree. Training also is a skill, right? Where education gives you a little bit more theory and understanding and the basis behind it. So, and I'll give you an example. All right, as in the medical field, I could teach anybody how to start an IV. It's not very hard, right? There's just a skill behind it. Um, but the education part of it is when and why you start the IV, what fluids that you're going to put inside there, what do those fluids do to the body, you know, how do they go process, how does the body process those fluids, you know, when do you put
Rate of injection.
rate of injection, the rate of flow, you know, all those things go into the IV, and that's the education part of it, right? So the difference is one's a skill, right? And we can teach anybody to do it. I could teach anybody here how to write, and let's bring it back to emergency management. If Daniel and I could teach anybody here how to write an IAP, right, and it's an action plan, right? You know, fill in the blanks, right? But it's the purpose behind it and why we're using it and how it's applied and how does it get out to everybody and stuff like this. And so that's the difference. So if you want to take like ICS, you know, 300, 400, you're going to learn the processes of what ICS is. Does that make you an ICS practitioner? I wouldn't say it does, you know, until you have some practice behind you, you know, understanding that part of it. So that's really the difference between the education and training. But the one thing I want you all to do, you know, is I want everybody to embrace the concept of lifelong learning. This is why we're here on the EM student, right? Emergency management student is that it's lifelong learning, right? And I mean, if you see behind me, I have a bookshelf that's busting at the shelves. I'm literally I had to buy 2 more bookshelves to fill these things, you know. Although I did have a friend of mine tell me to start buying digital books because it's takes up less space, but I still like the idea of underline and stuff like that. I'm old school, but the idea is that, you know, getting books, reading books, understanding what's inside of them, digesting them. I read with a pencil or a pen and these little flaggy things, these things here, you know, and if you take a look at my books, they're all flagged and stuff. You know, that's just the way I read and learn. I'm not saying that you have to do it that way. I was telling you just how I do it, but be that lifelong learner and challenge yourself to do that. So just because you get finished with a degree doesn't mean you should put your books away.
And I agree. And ultimately, as that's a decision each individual has to make. We can't. I mean, you can be voluntold to go get some training. So right, you got to get training to do X, Y, Z for your job, and you can be voluntold. But it's a decision that is made by the individual to learn um, and to continue learning. To be continual learner and a lifelong learner. It's not to say that you're always a student of the same subject. You can move things around. I mean, myself, I'm a student of not only emergency management, but leadership and ethics and just and business practice, because every day you got to learn how to deal with people. And so it's an effort to read, to write, to take notes when you're in a lecture. These are things that are, it's an intentional act that you as the individual have to make. And we're in obviously preaching to the choir here, but yeah, you have to make that choice to go out and seek it and take opportunities when it is just thrust upon you, to
Mhm.
say, this is an opportunity that I could use for my benefit to learn something, versus and when it comes to like FEMA and EMI, which is considered the higher education aspect of emergency management, and CDP, which is considered the hands-on skills trade school of emergency response. These are things, yeah, go take advantage of those and learn and excel and keep going back. Your state offers so many different trainings. But yeah, if you're going to go back to school, making the decision to choose a program that is going to best suit you as the individual and how you tend to apply it. But it's a continual choice that you make as a person, and also it's not being discouraged when things don't necessarily go your way the first time. You don't get into a program the first time. Does that mean stop applying? No. Try again. Is that the best program for you? Try another program. It's overcoming hurdles as well. It's a choice not to be, well, I didn't get in, so I guess I'm not going to do this. No, you didn't get in this time. You
Right.
didn't get into this program. There are other programs out there. There's other. I mean, Naval Postgraduate School. Since we mentioned that, I've applied twice and I've been turned down twice. I put in my other application for the next coming, because it's so hard to get in. It's such a school. It's a school that everybody wants to get in. They can only take so many people. So they tell you apply and apply and apply, and that's
Right.
what you have to do.
First of all, I want to say hi to Mark Vogel. Hey, buddy. Nice seeing you out there. Um, so Mark says when we think we know it all, it's time to get out of the field. And absolutely, it's funny because when I was doing the medical stuff, I had to go through continuing education classes all the time. I had to do it was like 48 hours of continuing education every year or every 2 years. I mean, so 24 hours of and it was, you had to go to classes and get your certificate and get your CEs and put your package together. And when you apply for your license again for the next year, or in 2 years, you had to do this. And so every 2 years, you were up and get tested again. You had to actually go and do a practical exam every 2 years to show that you had your skills. And police officers, they go through post training here in California. They have to have X amount of post hours of training every year to show that they're to show what they're doing. So
Fire
um,
service does, medical profession, nurses, doctors, they all have to do that. So yeah, it's continual improvement. So, and I had my EMT license as well, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
right. So absolutely. So I actually think that, well, we do, right? If you're a CEM, you have to go through X amount of continuing education hours as well.
Yeah, you have to basically, when you go back to research, you got to tell them what you've done over the last, it's 5 years in as a CEM. You go back every 5 years and put in your application. You got to tell them what you've done to improve the EM profession. What papers have you written? What conferences have you attended? What conferences have you spoke at? What training have you attended? These are all things that they want to know, and you have to put down and prove that you've done as continual learning and also application to the field, which is, even in my opinion, even more important. What do I do to better the EM profession, to push the EM profession further, to encourage others to be better EMs? These are things that we have to take on as well, and that's one of the things as a CEM you have to show, what have I contributed to the field of emergency management in order to continue to hold that certification.
Absolutely. And Nick makes another good point about enrolling in the EMI Advanced Academy. And at the end of the day, and we have to really just take a look at these programs, what fits you, right? And what your goals are, and set your education goals. Set your education goals, and once you set those goals and go forward, and you know what, I'm telling you, reach out to Dan, reach out to myself, or other people that are in your network, who can mentor you through that program, because bouncing those questions off of people are really important, and to be able to sit down and really kind of think it out. So, like anything else, if before you start jumping into programs, know what your goal is in life and professionally and personally, and that's how you should pursue your education goals.
And research the programs that you're desiring too. Don't just, oh, well, that program looks nice. Let me enroll in it. No, research it a little bit. See what's involved, how long they usually take. If these are what you're going to be learning throughout the program. Does it actually apply? There are some programs that say emergency management. They don't actually talk about emergency management, but they talk about things that relate to it. So it's good. It's good to research the programs that you want to go into. So as we wrap up, don't forget. So Todd joined me today on his show on my show, but tomorrow, 9 o'clock, live stream will be EM Weekly, featuring Todd DeVoe and myself. And so don't forget to tune in for that as well. Also, I just want to leave you real quick with this. You have brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose. Dr. Seuss. Thank you very much. This is Dan Scott. I'll talk to you soon.